Continue finding our seats. All right, and as we get started, you guys hear me all right? Dr. Ono, can you hear me in the back there?
Yes, sir.
Yes. And as we get started, can we just all commit to putting our phones away for the next half an hour? Can we commit to taking out earbuds, AirPods, and the like? Please. All right, good morning. For most of us, the first 2 weeks of every Kensal school year are kind of a blur. We arrive on campus and attend orientation, then we go off on our class connections, then we begin athletic practices and games, then we start attending classes, and then we meet with Dr. Onu several dozen times to fine-tune our schedules. It is a busy time of year, but we're finally approaching the end of week 2, and to me that means settling in and really committing ourselves to the year ahead, to doing our best in all aspects of campus life, and to learning how to live together in a spirit of mutual respect. In the next hour, we will formally launch the 2022-2023 school year by doing 3 things. We will learn about the ways in which Kensal defines our community expectations. We will dedicate ourselves to these expectations by signing the Kensal Honor Pledge. And we will gather in our advisory groups to discuss the meaning and significance of our honor code. For those of you who are new to our community, it's worth emphasizing that the honor code is something we review every year, and it's something we take very seriously. What we're doing this morning is nothing less than committing ourselves to building a strong community and upholding academic integrity. Kensal outlines both of these goals, building a strong community and upholding academic integrity, in a document called the Student Handbook, which we reshare with students and families toward the beginning of every school year. As most of you know, the handbook provides basic information on everything from our dress code and technology policies to athletics and our residential life program. But the heart and soul of the document is a really important section called Community Expectations. It begins on page 40, if you're interested. This section is worth reading and rereading because it includes a series of statements that, in my opinion, establish who we are as a Kensal community. As I did last year, I'm going to read several of these statements out loud, and as you listen, I hope you will agree with me that they ought to be taken seriously, that they describe the kind of trusting, responsible, tight-knit community we all want and we all deserve. So these statements are all taken directly out of the Student Handbook. We are kind, welcoming, inclusive, and respectful to all members of our community. We take responsibility for our actions and work to assist others in accepting responsibility for theirs. We are willing to step up and step in when we see or experience behavior that is harmful to any member of our community. We do not use offensive, vulgar, or degrading language, gestures, or actions. We meet all required obligations on time, including classes, athletics, activities, meals, and curfews. And we respect personal property and space, both our own and others, and work together to keep personal and community spaces clean and neat. Committing ourselves to these principles should get us to that first goal. It should help us build a strong and healthy community. If we can be kind and welcoming, if we can meet our obligations and take responsibility for our behavior, if we can respect the spaces on our campus and the people we share them with, then we should succeed in creating a healthy community and in having a great year. As many of you know, the Student Handbook also addresses the second goal that Kensal pursues through its honor code, honor board, and honor pledge, and that's academic integrity. If you take a careful look at that long list of affirmations I just quoted, eventually you will read this. We demonstrate and uphold the highest integrity and honesty in all academic work. This means that we do our own work, we do not cheat, and we do not present the work of others as our own. You'll notice that the word honesty appears in the first line of that statement, And many of our new students, and hopefully all of our returning students, will remember that honesty is one of the Kents Hill core values. In other words, it's an ethical principle that we expect you to exemplify in all of your interactions with others on our campus, and that we hope you'll continue to cultivate and practice as you continue your journey through higher education and on to adulthood. And here, I think it's worth pausing to emphasize that while everyone makes mistakes, acting without integrity in your academic life or your professional life can lead to some pretty unpleasant consequences. And I don't relish starting the school year with this message or tone, and I certainly don't mean to scare anyone. Delphin has informed me that I do that sometimes. And in fact, we have a lot to look forward to this year. We have so many things to learn, so many people to meet, so many Kents Hill traditions to experience. It should be a great year for all of us, and we should feel excited about what lies ahead. But at the same time, I do want you to remember that at Kents Hill, in college, and in life after college, failing to act with integrity can get you into real trouble. And I've asked two of my colleagues to share a few cautionary tales with us to help drive that point home. Like the examples of college-level cheating at Harvard and West Point that I shared last year, these are real-life stories that show what can happen when we don't take honesty as seriously as we should. So without further ado, I want to invite Adam Shabbat, Kents Hill's English Department Chair, to share a true story about intellectual dishonesty and its consequences in the world of journalism. Mr. Shabbat.
Well, speaking of honesty, I want to honestly just shout out 4 victories over Hebron yesterday. That was like the coolest news, right? Let's not for that. All right. So I want to start by telling you about one of my favorite TV shows. And one of my favorite TV shows is The Office. And there's this moment in the season finale of season 4 when Michael Scott, he's the lead character, he says to his obedient assistant named Dwight, he says, "You know, Dwight, sometimes, I don't know, I think you just say things to agree with me." Dwight looks at him and proudly responds, "Well, would that be such a bad thing?" Dumbfounded, Michael looks at him and he says, "Yeah, it would. Just have a thought, have an original thought." And I think about that a lot. I actually printed out the photo of this exact moment from the show, and I taped it to my classroom door. And from time to time, I look at it. It's sort of my motivational poster, I guess. And it's a reminder of not just the virtue of telling the truth, but a reminder of the realities, the often brusque realities, that in our world, there are things that are and there are things that are not. There is true and there is untrue. And in that sense, plagiarism, which Dr. Priest mentioned and alluded to, is the act of utilizing another's ideas, thoughts, or words and expressing them as one's own. And this only contributes to dishonesty. It's a darkening cloak over truth, an often intentional attempt to deceive at the immediate benefit of oneself. Although my somewhat ridiculous Office reference isn't exactly an example of plagiarism, it is an example of unoriginality and dishonesty, a short-term, short-sighted deception motivated just in the hopes of meeting an expectation. It's a recipe for failure. On March 1st, 2012, the Portland Press-Herald published a story about a young reporter who worked at Mainly Media, an advertising and newspaper firm in Biddeford, Maine, who had been fired after it was discovered that he had plagiarized information and interview quotes from rival newspapers. The scathing article included side-by-sides of the articles, the plagiarized and the original source, quotes highlighted in green and in red and in yellow to indicate the different newspapers from which this reporter stole. Of course, the reporter apologized. He provided his excuses, but what was done was done. He was immediately fired, and the firm for which he had worked had to begin the arduous task of rebuilding their credibility. As far as I can find, this reporter hasn't ever worked in journalism again. 6 days after the Portland Press-Herald released this story, I applied for a job at Mainly Media to be a newspaper reporter. On March 10th, 2012, I went in for an interview. On March 12th, 2012, my 23rd birthday, I was hired and began immediately working as a reporter for the Kennebunk Post newspaper, a subsidiary of Mainly Media. Of course, I had read about the plagiarism incident. It was immediately brought up in my interview. I remember the way the editor looked at me with those sharp, discerning eyes, the look of someone who'd been scorned. He knew and I knew what was at stake. And I want to be clear, the moral of the story is not that plagiarism got me my first job out of college. That was kind of cool, but or that mainly media was scrounging to find a way to begin reconstructing its reputation. The moral of the story really is that lying and cheating and plagiarism in this sense has real-world consequences. For me, at the time, I had just moved to the small city of Bath, Maine to live with Mrs. Shabbat in our one-bedroom apartment. I had just graduated from college. I was over $36,000 in student debt, and although I was ready to work my tail off, I just needed the job. I needed something to begin my professional life. And I realized that this job was pretty hard. My workday began before 8 o'clock in the morning. I had an hour-and-a-half commute from where I lived to where I worked. And oftentimes my workday stretched until 10 or 11 o'clock at night. There were weeknights that included taking notes and interviewing people and sitting through the Town of Kennebunkport Site Plan Review Board, which is as riveting as it sounds. But I knew I had to be there, and I had to find the truth, and I had to tell the truth, and I had to do the job well and do the job with honor and pride. I made mistakes, don't get me wrong. I was 23 years old trying to figure it out, but I knew that if I always searched for truth, then I could somehow be doing the right thing because, again, my future was at stake. In fact, my editor, the one who hired me, the one who looked at me with those discerning eyes, ended up being one of my job references that helped me get hired here at Kensal School 11 years ago. Had I decided one night, and trust me, the temptation was there, that much like that one young reporter, that I could save myself some hassle, I could pull from other sources, make up quotes, there's no doubt in my mind that I would not have what I have today. A job I love, a family I love, a life I love. I'm not being dramatic, and trust me, I get it. It's easy for me to stand here and say this, but it's true. Dishonesty, as I've learned, only brings more dishonesty, and there's currency to integrity, right? Telling the truth is a daring but necessary concept, and I believe that if you commit to it, you can, or you will find that what is the right thing will find you. Again, to repeat, there is too much at stake for all of us, and academic honor is at the heart of something so much greater than what you will bring to the classroom. Plagiarism, I believe, isn't some flippant choice or a quick clandestine fix to your academic problems. Intellectual dishonesty is a difficult way to navigate your student life, and it'll give you nothing but a remediation of one's character, and certainly of one's connection to our Kensal School core values. There are many reasons why students cheat. There's a plethora of rationales and assortment of excuses, and though Kensal School, and I want to be clear, is a wonderful place where you can make those mistakes and make amends, and I sincerely believe that it's unfair to label students who've made these mistakes as bad students, but rather students who've just made the wrong choice. Nor is this meant to be a doomsday story. In fact, it's the opposite. Your teachers, your advisors, the staff, the faculty who work here, we care about you so much that we want you to live and grow and learn in a system where truth is a prevailing narrative. And if you commit to it, I believe, again, good things will happen, much like they did for me. Thank you. And now I'd like to welcome Mr. Tell to the podium.
Good morning. So I want to talk about a story in a lapse of judgment in athletics. So every 4 years, this is a really big event hosted. Some of you have probably heard of it. It's called the Olympics. And the last time America hosted it was in 2002 in Salt Lake City. And I had the privilege to attend because I'm from that area. And there was an Olympic athlete in, I want to say, the downhill ski race who was expected to win. He was one of the greatest of all time. And we watched this race, and as it came up, they announced his name. The whole crowd exploded in these stands at the top of the Little Stick Run at Deer Valley Resort. And we watched and waited for him to come around into vision to finish this race, and he never came. He had crashed, and he did not finish his race, nor did he finish his second run. Later to find out that some of the skills that he had developed in high school affected his ability to win his Olympic dream, or even medal, let alone finish. Because he had shown up to the race hungover. He had developed some drinking skills, and his lapse of integrity to himself had lost that opportunity. Now, I think that that ends sorely, but it doesn't, because he's still one of the greatest of all times. He did go on to recover. He has become an incredible athlete and won very many international competitions. So I don't want to say that just because you may have had some lapse in judgments for yourself, that there's not a chance for recovery. There always is. And you can still become the greatest of all time in all of your dreams and your hopes. And I hope that this story can tell you how it is that you can make decisions today through our honor code and being honest to yourself and the citizenship that you're developing here today by signing this honor code, to make decisions that will, make your dreams come true. I will now have Ms. Sage come up to talk about the honor code and the honor board.
Thank you, Ms. Tortel and Mr. Shabbat, for sharing your stories. I think they were really insightful. So as we have heard from Mr. Shabbat and Ms. Tortel, things such as like integrity, honesty, and honor, those are all really integral parts of your life, not just here at Kents Hill, but in all facets that go beyond here. Here at Kents Hill, we strive to live by and hold ourselves to our own honor code. I'm now going to read that honor code to you so you know what it is you're signing today. The honor code reads, Kents Hill School's core values provide the foundation for both academic and social honor. As a member of the Kents Hill community, you pledge to uphold the core values by completing all academic work with integrity and treating yourself and others with respect. The Kents Hill Honor Board is comprised of selected student leaders and faculty members who put it upon themselves to hear and see violations of the honor code that are brought before them and determine what restorative practices and/or course of action will be the best fit for the individual who has committed the violation. At this time, I would like our current members of the honor board, both faculty and students, to stand. Ms. Heron's taking a picture of you, so we're gonna stand for a minute. She got it, okay, we're good. You can now sit, thank you. So now as a community, we are going to embark on signing our honor pledge for the 2022 and 2023 academic school year. In a moment, Ms. Tortel is going to call you up by advisory groups, and you will come sign one of the 4 placards, boards, whatever you want to call them, that are up here on stage. Please feel free to go to whichever line is shortest so we can keep it moving the quickest, okay? All right. At this point in time, I'd like to invite Ms. Tracy and Dr. Priest to come up and welcome the advisory groups. And Ms. Tortel, would you like to come back to the mic and read off the names?
So we'll start over here with Davis and Josh Reynolds advisory groups. We can also have Ms. Chute and Becca Reynolds. Hannon and Graziano.
I'm going to cut you off for a second. Is that okay? Yes. Advisors are also welcome to sign. If we're expecting the students to uphold it, we should uphold it ourselves as well. Let's go, adults. Also, following your advisory signing, you are welcome to go to your advisory locations. Not welcome. You should go to your advisory locations to have a discussion. Or if you are a junior or senior who is interested in Providence College, Miss Tracy would like me to say.
They're in the chapel.
Go to the chapel.
We'll have Miss Cole, Huron, and Bellevaux come up next, please. McDonald and Moreau. Badia Lopez and Huron. Elena. Jordan and Gifford. Munson, Tracy, and Miranda. Hurdle and Jenkins. Whitestone, Clark, Cheney. Bailey and Buka. Caralucci and Bennett. Oh.